Many spiritual traditions around the world have found that using the theme of 5 elements, it has been very useful at analysing the world. And so I say 5 because we've got the 4 familiar ones of earth, air, fire and water, but normally around a central one of ether or the spirit. And so you can find this, for example, in classical Greek philosophy, in Hinduism, Buddhism, Tibetan Bon, medieval alchemy, paganism, and the list goes on. We also see that a similar division of looking at the physical world is in the zodiac. Astrological zodiac, the 12 signs are divided into the 4 elements, and in the tarot deck, the suit of cups, wands, swords, and pentacles represent the 4 elements. So today we're just going to look at one of these, and that is the one of water. And water, and maybe I should say H2O, because it's actually looking also at its frozen and vaporized states as well. But it's such a remarkable thing. I read one scientist say, water shouldn't really exist on this planet because it breaks all the rules. And we'll come on to look at these rules that are broken and what significance they have, because if water didn't break the rules, we wouldn't exist. This, I'm sure you all know this very simple cycle of water. Simple, and yet this is what keeps our planet alive. Water vapor rises up from the oceans, it rises up from rivers, and also water vapor is put into the air by the respiration of all green plants and trees. And the water vapor goes up, it forms clouds, it moves around the atmosphere, and then it falls as precipitation, mostly rain, but sometimes as snow and sleet and stuff, but we don't talk about those on a lovely day like today. And some of it runs off down mountains, as surface runoff to form streams and rivers. Some of it goes underground, sometimes very deep, and is there for a long time. Some of these deep artesian wells are now giving us water which fell as rain 1,000 years ago. So sometimes the cycle is very quick, sometimes it's very long. And these underground ones are very important because when they reach the surface, they form springs which lead into streams, etc. So we're going to start off with springs. Sacred springs. Why should springs be sacred? And yet we know from oral tradition and limited in timescale written tradition that springs have been revered as places of healing, places that can be used for oracular purposes by people all across this planet, all societies, particularly those who are more in tune with nature, still connected to our living planet, revere the water sources. This image in the bottom right here, as is Elisa Holywell in Cornwall, and lots of sacred springs down in Cornwall, as well as many other places, of course. And I just really want to make the point that people have been visiting these sites for thousands of years, as long, I suspect, as there have been people and there have been springs. There are many stories handed down through oral tradition of women visiting the springs to increase their fertility, taking children, either to bathe them or to drink, to cure all sorts of ailments and maladies, and also using them for oracular purposes. Some maidens would go, and there are various rituals you can do at the springs to find if you would meet your true love, your sweetheart, this season. And then along comes Christianity and builds stone edifices over these sacred springs, and they get the name then of holy wells. But they're really the same thing. They're still the same water source is still as powerful. This top left is Mennacuddle, Holy Well in Cornwall. Bottom left is St Clair. And on the right here, this is Wells Cathedral. And I've included that here because Wells, the name of the city, it gets its name from the fact that there's an upwelling of water. There are springs beneath this pond, which is within the grounds of the Bishop's Palace Gardens in Wells. And if you've never been, do go, not just because it's an amazing Kodak opportunity, but also because this water is potentized. And we'll actually come on a little later to have a closer look at Wells. And of course, we're here in Glastonbury, the world-famous Chalice Well, considered by many to be the most sacred holy well or spring in the country, and leaving its stain of iron in the runways and rills as it runs through. So why I ask is, would this water be revered? Of course, we all need water. We're something, I don't know whether quite what a percentage is, something like 70%, maybe even higher, of water. We need water physically to survive, and so does all life on this planet. But is there anything else going on? Well, our planet is 70% water. The 70% of the surface is covered by water. And I'd like to look very briefly at what is happening within the planet that might affect the water. Could an iron ball 1,500 miles across be a single crystal? This remarkable finding has stirred new thinking about Earth's inner core. The latest scientific belief is that the very centre of the Earth, which they used to say was molten magma, is now a huge, solid, iron, crystalline mass. And here's a picture of an iron crystal. So this is in the centre of our planet, and the planet is spinning, as we all know, at 1,100 miles an hour, and I'm sure you know what an electric generator does. An electric generator is an iron rod, and you spin it within a ring of magnets, and you generate electricity. The Earth is a generator of electromagnetism. It's spinning. The Earth's gravitational field acts in the similar way to the magnets, and electromagnetism is generated. I've got a little schematic here of what I think is happening inside the Earth. So I'm using the form of electronics because it's a very sort of you're watching this because of this computer. Our entire world now, our technological world, is based on computer, which, as Chris mentioned this morning, with talking about quartz and radios, the early radios were based on crystal, and so are quartz wristwatches, and so is this. Silicon chips are quartz, so they're really important. And so let's imagine that this big chip in the center is representing the iron core, and it's spinning. And then down here, we've got all these underground aquifers and big sheets of this, maybe one of the big slabs of underground quartz. And over in here, we'll have some banks of resistors, which would be mica, for example. Anyway, so all this is creating electromagnetism, which wants to take the path of least resistance to the surface. Here we are looking up at the underneath of the surface of the planet from inside, and let's imagine that these are ley lines connecting sacred sites. So if we follow this energy going up to that point, well, if on top of that there was this chalice well, it starts to make sense that this water is special, because the electromagnetism within the earth follows a path of least resistance. That's normally one of three things: underground water, fault lines, or beds of crystalline rock. We're going to just focus on the underground water, and so it gets charged up by the currents of electromagnetism generated by the earth, and it comes to the surface through the water. That's why I would suggest holy wells and springs not only have been revered for healing properties, but actually are healing. To partake and to drink of those waters is healing for us. And that's why we get people doing strange things, coming along to Chalice Well and standing barefoot in the water. And of course we know that the Michael and Mary currents flow through Chalice Well Gardens and actually create a node point here just in front of steps in King Arthur's Court. So that is, I think, what is happening behind them. And it's a similar principle to homeopathy. Homeopathy really is a certain substance is taken. It may be belladonna, and it's diluted and made into a mother tincture, and then it's diluted again and diluted again. Every time they dilute it, they succuss it, which means they shake it. And that's really important. If you don't shake it, nothing happens. The shaking fixes the energetic blueprint, and so the energy is passed on and actually amplified every time it is diluted, but the molecules of the original substance get less and less until they're not there anymore. But what's important is the energetic imprint that's retained in the water. And so we find that water is a carrier of energy, of energetic blueprints. I'll come on to say much more about this. If you raise a toast to someone, if you go to a wedding and the toast, to the health and well-being of the bride and groom, you say this wonderful sort of loving thought out loud for everyone to hear, toasting the couple that are getting married. And then people chink their glasses together. They're succussing it. They're fixing that loving thought into the liquid, which you then imbibe and take into your energetic system. And so you really take that greeting within yourself, and so does everyone else in the room. So that's my take on what happens when we make a toast. And of course, I'm sure you've all heard of the work of Dr. Emoto in Japan, who has photographed ice crystals, and what he does, I'm sure I probably don't have to tell you, he either speaks words to little vials of water, or tapes words onto them, or even sometimes plays music to them. And this, for example, it was a little vial of water that he put the words love and thanks on. And when it freezes, then as it thaws, he takes a photograph through an electron microscope, and this is the most beautiful pattern of all the crystals he achieved. With each different word or each different thought, a different pattern occurs. And yet if he repeats, and you say there are never two snowflakes the same, but if he uses the same words, love and thanks, he keeps getting this image. And so the water is holding the memory of that loving thought, and it's manifesting in the physical structure, the molecular structure of H2O. It's very special stuff. I'll have a drink. Well, these are the hot sacred springs of Bath, and we're all aware of the Roman baths, but in actual fact it was a sacred place long before the Romans. There's evidence of human activity around the hot thermal springs in this valley going back 10,000 years, and that's just the archaeological evidence. The Bath is in a valley which is surrounded by 7 hills, which I believe would have been seen as sacred hills, and in the bottom would have been probably a water meadow and hot thermal water. Bath has the only hot water coming up from the ground which is above body temperature in the whole of England. Droitwich Spa is just a couple of degrees below body temperature, whereas the ones at Bath are up around about 116 degrees Fahrenheit. And so, of course, this would have been a magical, sacred place. And the story of it, you maybe know the story of Bladud. Bladud was the son of the 8th king of Britain, and he was around about, well, we're going to be talking about his activity in 863 BCE. He went to Greece to study what was happening there, and he contracted leprosy. And so when he came back, he felt he was not fit to be king because he was imperfect. And he went off to a remote part of the country to become a swineherd, and did that in the Avon area. The swine, the pigs he was tending, apparently contracted leprosy as well and became ill. But then one day he crossed the waters and he entered the area where the city of Bath now is, and the pigs wallowed in the hot, muddy waters and were cured. And so, of course, Bladud jumps in as well and bathes himself, and he becomes cured of leprosy, and then he returns and becomes the 9th king of the Britons, the father of the ill-fated King Lear. And so in appreciation for that, he actually founded the city of Bath in 863 BCE. But before Bladud ever was conceived, those hot waters were considered sacred. And on the left we have Sulis. Sulis was revered as the goddess of healing waters by the native people of this land. And this wonderful drawing showing her red hair reflecting the red chalybeate staining, which, again, just like in Glastonbury, the waters of Bath leave a red staining on the channels they run through. And the beautiful aqua green of her dress reflecting the colour of the water. This is the sacred springs at Bath today, which were enclosed and built up over by the Romans. The Romans, and if you go to Bath, you'll see this. This isn't the Roman baths, although some people think it is. This is actually a Victorian impersonation of what they thought the Roman baths looked like, because the original ones got knocked down and buried over. I think these stumps of pillars are part of the original. But the Romans, they really hated the climate in this country, and so really this was the best posting in Britain, to be posted at Bath and be able to get into warm waters. And their goddess of healing was Minerva. But they showed so much respect for the native tradition of Sulis that they normally combined the Celtic names and their own names, but put the Roman one first. Their goddess of healing waters, it's all the steam, it's bringing it off. So she should really have been called Minerva Sulis, but in honour of the power of Sulis, they called her Sulis Minerva. And we know that the Romans didn't just use these baths for luxuriating and relaxation. They used them for healing as well, because this is Asclepius, the ancient god of healing from ancient Greece. And there's a temple dedicated to Asclepius in the Roman bath complex. And you see him here with his staff and snake, which is a symbol that's still used by the medical professions around the world. And how wonderful that today, in modern times, the spa has now been reopened in the last few years, and so you can go along and you can again bathe and do sort of immerse yourself in the waters. You've always been able to drink it, but it's a long time since you've actually been able to bathe in them. Well, that's sort of quite a lot of heady stuff. I'm now going to invite Cameron to come up, and she's going to give you a more intuitive interpretation on sacred springs.
This is an invitation, not an invitation from the past, but an invitation for anyone today. Answering the call of water, you walk along ancient paths, for most sacred springs are off the beaten track and hidden within the secret folds of our Mother Earth. You'll sometimes find the path overgrown and sometimes freshly trodden by modern pilgrims. In spring, summer, and autumn, there will be wildflowers growing in profusion in the hedgerows, offering a visual and fragrant delight. If you're not in a hurry, each step will help quiet your busy mind. You find there is a choir of birds perched in the treetops, melodiously accompanying your footfalls. You are aware of the weather and nature all around you. Are you really present, or just a casual observer? This is an important moment. Do you embrace it? You come upon the wellhead rather by surprise, for there is no fanfare. You are already in an altered state from your walk here. Pause for a moment to ask permission to enter the site, as the guardians will be delighted if you talk with them. If you've allowed yourself to talk to the spirit of a sacred site, then you will surely be open enough to hear their reply. When you step down to the source of the spring, your eyes will readjust to the dark, and you see the fluorescent green, the moss glowing brightly on the stones surrounding the spring, a tiny leaf seemingly floating in the air in front of you, and offerings of crystals and coins inserted between damp surfaces as close to the water surface as a grateful hand could reach. A bubble ripples the surface of the magical liquid, and circles radiate outwards to kiss the rocky walls. You reach down and oh so reverently allow your fingers to slip into the dark water. Time has no measure here. You are with Source. You are. You may remember to ask the question you came to ask, but it really doesn't matter, for your heart is wide and open, and no words are needed. The hole within that is always crying out to be filled is not just full, it is healed. Your emotions flow freely. Thank you. Thank you. You step out into the light and feel transformed and healed. Thank you.
Great. So moving on from springs to rivers. In the Bible, we hear of the Euphrates, the top picture here, and the Tigris, two rivers which were revered as sacred because the waters feeding them apparently flowed directly out of the Garden of Eden. And these two rivers, which run parallel through the ancient land of Mesopotamia, brought life to this part of the arid world. And of course the Nile, such a sacred and revered river, the longest river in the world. Here we can see the Nile actually runs through 10 different countries from its two sources, the White Nile and the Blue Nile. And looking at the image on the right, this is a satellite image from space. You can actually see how you're not just looking at the river, you're looking at the fertile floodplain either side of it and the huge fertile Nile delta to the north. You can see here from the top two images how close the Nile runs to the pyramids, and in fact the top left picture, the black and white one, it was even closer. It is today. It doesn't flood as much as it used to because of the construction of several dams upriver. Initially the Aswan Dam in 1902 and then the Aswan High Dam in 1960, which really restricted the flow of water and restricted the flooding, which was great shame in many ways because that flooding was so essential for fertilizing the land and bringing down silt. But look at the picture in the bottom right corner. This boat, 4 boats were found buried around the sides of Khufu's pyramid at Giza, the largest of the pyramids, the Great Pyramid. And because part of their cosmology, and we have to give thanks to people like Robert Bauval, Adrian Gilbert, Graham Hancock and others for bringing to light again the fact that the whole land of Egypt is really a reflection, a mirroring of what's happening in the cosmos. The Nile reflects the Milky Way, and the pyramids are located where important stars are in the night sky, visible from Egypt. And the pharaohs on their afterlife journey, not as I believe the pyramids were tombs by any means. They were really initiation chambers, I believe, amongst other things, but we're not going into that today. But these boats were for the pharaohs to make a journey up into the heavens. So water was considered really important. And then the Ganges, I mean, possibly the most sacred river on the planet, certainly the one which attracts the most devotees. Benares and, many places along the Ganges are considered to be are ritual centres for particularly Hindus. This picture in the bottom left is Allahabad. There, once every 12 years, they have a huge water festival, and the last time it took place in 2007, 70 million Hindus attended over a 45-day period, the largest peaceful gathering in the world to honour water. Now I want to bring our attention, and you will have to excuse this, the fact I'm really skipping on quickly because I want to touch on a lot of different subjects. The confluence of 2 streams or 2 rivers has been considered sacred, again, in many cultures. These are 2 of the streams which feed into the headwaters of the Nile. Here we have 2 streams coming together in New Zealand, and the right-hand picture is of 2 streams converging and joining in North America. Because the North American, Native Americans in North America particularly revered the confluence of 2 streams as being a sacred site, a place they would never camp or make a settlement, but a place they would visit and do ceremony. And why might that be? Well, we know that where water crashes, either at waterfalls or the confluence of rivers or sitting by the sea, negative ions are produced. And negative ions are very positive for us, for our bodies. Negative ions reoxygenate our blood. They help our heart, They stimulate our immune system, and they actually just make us feel good. So it's a real feel-good factor. That's why people love sitting by the ocean or by a rippling brook. Well, if you're not fortunate enough to have a waterfall in your back garden, this company, Energy, make these devices that will produce negative ions in your own home. Because in a normal sort of a countryside setting, there are between 2,000 and 4,000 negative ions per cubic centimetre in the atmosphere. At Yosemite Falls in California, there's 100,000 negative ions per cubic centimetre, and the same at Niagara. And look, our friends here, we went to Niagara Falls with them in the middle of winter, and although the falls were half frozen, and it was minus 20 degrees outside, and that's minus 20 Celsius, they were still smiling. So there's proof for you. And the Native Americans knew also about negative ions because they're sweat lodgers. They instinctively knew that if you probably know a sweat lodge, you create a sort of a bender, you cover it up with skins or canvas, and you have a fire outside, you heat up large stones, red hot, and then you carry them inside, and you close the flap, seal it all, and pour water on, and steam comes off. But not only steam, you're in a sauna, also negative ions, a mass of negative ions, and they're enclosed in this space. A perfect chamber in which to do spiritual work. And the Finns found that out with their wood-fired saunas as well. So moving on now from rivers to lakes. This is Lake Titicaca, South America, on the border between Peru and Bolivia. And this was revered as sacred. It's one of the highest lakes in the world. Very, very high, thousands of feet above sea level. And it was revered as the place from which in the Inca culture, they revered this as the place from which the creator god, Viracocha, arose to repopulate the world after there'd been a global catastrophe that nearly wiped out humanity. So this was the source of life. Life arose from the waters again, as we know that life originally arose from the soup, watery brew which covered the earth. And thanks to Hugh for these graphics, because Hugh was at Lake Titicaca a year or two ago, and found that the Michael and Mary currents, known as the rainbow serpent there, of course we know about Michael and Mary currents here from Chalice Well, but they cross the island of the sun, the Isla del Sol, situated in Lake Titicaca. So the Michael and Mary currents are running through Lake Titicaca, and this is where the Michael current is, and this is where the Mary current is. And closer to home, on Bodmin Moor, Dosmary Pool. And I always feel that name must mean it's a place where Mary sleeps. Dosmary. She's having a doze. And why is Dosmary revered? Because in the Arthurian legend, it is the place out of which the Lady of the Lake arose to gift Excalibur and its magical scabbard to Arthur, which gave him his power. She actually said, this sword's name is Excalibur. It's really powerful. There's a whole story about a scabbard, which I won't go into today, but it's a great story. So his power, Arthur's power, arose out of water. And in Chalice Well, there's a story that the Holy Grail is hidden beneath the waters in the wellhead. The Holy Grail, the source of the Knights of the Round Table's quest, the ultimate prize, enlightenment, spiritual enlightenment, is hidden within water. I mean, how many more pointers do we need? This is Rorite stones in the Cotswolds, Oxfordshire. There's a story associated with these stones, this stone circle, and many others, by the way, across the country, that the stones go down to the river to drink at midnight. The stones tap into the power of the water, and I believe that the stones actually draw up the electromagnetism from underground water and potentize the circles. Water's been used in spiritual traditions, and here we've got some Christian ones. Jesus being baptized by St. John, and full immersion baptism, and we all know of the bottom right picture is a more traditional view of baptism. But water was seen as the agent that could carry spirit. And if you're Catholic and you go into a church, you'll find one of these, a little sort of a font or piscina by the door, and Catholics cross themselves with holy water. St. Teresa's church in Dublin is very pragmatic and very wise, because they realise that actually not every good Catholic would make it to Mass on time. You know, maybe you got delayed by an extra pint of Guinness or something. And so if you're a member of St. Teresa's and you get there and the church is shut, you can just go around the back and help yourself to some holy water. And holy water, Holy Jesus, if you're not in Dublin, you can go on the internet and you can buy Jesus water. And if Jesus water floats your boat, sorry about that, there's a whole set of 5 you can buy for defence, freedom, balance, focus, and the all-important 5th one, Formula J. Which, if the image on the front's anything to go by, makes thorns stick out of your head. And now, this is make your own caption section. I think this guy here is saying, I'm sorry, my son, but that monk from Gujarat broke the last teacup this morning. As he's dispensing holy water. And this Buddha seems to be eyeing this water very suspiciously in Japan. I think he's saying to the woman offering it, are you sure you didn't get out of the kitchen tap this morning? So throughout the world, water is revered for its sacred properties. What is happening inside water molecules? Let's get down to that. A water molecule, H2O, 2 atoms of hydrogen, 1 atom of oxygen. Oxygen burns. Hydrogen burns. Water doesn't burn. Water puts out flames, in actual fact. It's very odd. Why would that be? What we find when we look at the molecular structure of water is that there's something taking place called hydrogen bonding. And these little hydrogen atoms aren't always with this oxygen. They come and link onto it. But when they link on, they always link in pairs like this on one side. And it makes that side positively charged because hydrogen has a slight positive charge. And so this side is more negative because overall the whole atom is evenly balanced. And this bonding is really short-lived. It happens trillions of times every second. So they're bonding and unbonding, bonding, unbonding, bonding, unbonding all the time. This is happening in every drop of water. And, you know, these are tiny, tiny, tiny. There's something like a trillion on a pinhead of amount of water. So there's so many, and they're doing this bonding, unbonding all the time, which some scientists say proves that homeopathy is a load of rubbish, because with them constantly unbonding, they wouldn't be able to, water can't have a memory because they're constantly unbonding. I think completely the opposite. I mean, look at our computers. Our computers are basically just do on-off. Positive, I mean, computers are just, you know, on or off. I don't mean the whole computer. You know, it's all to do with the electronic signals, and it's either 1 or 0. It's on or off, and it's all the time. And our computers can search millions of bits of information in an incredibly short time. I believe that's exactly what water does. I think we're going to find that water is the most amazing commodity on this planet, which we should really, really, really respect and revere and use wisely. One of the anomalous properties of water is that it's the only substance on this planet that exists in all three states of matter, as vapour, as a liquid, and as a solid. So here at Niagara Falls, you've got ice, you've got the water flowing, and you've got water vapour rising. we took this, you can go behind the falls, and these lookouts. So you go in these tunnels through the rock, and you get views out at certain places. It's really amazing. So here's the solid structure of water. And it basically, when water freezes and becomes solid, it adopts a sort of a hexagonal lattice grid pattern. And we see that here. This is ice, and the hexagonal. You can see that hexagonal shape. And here's a crystal on a window. And then water. In water, there's far more. Water vapor. There's far more space between the atoms. They very seldom sort of connect. Or when they do connect, they don't connect for long. And so there's much more space. So that's why it's much less dense. And then as water, look at that tight bonding. Water is one of the few, almost not exclusively, but one of the very few commodities on the planet whose liquid state is more dense than its solid. And that is absolutely crucial to life on this planet. If that didn't exist, we wouldn't exist. So I'm not going into all the science behind that, but it makes liquid water so special. There are something like 43 anomalous properties of water, how it breaks the rules and it shouldn't really exist. One of them is at 4 degrees Celsius. Whether you heat it or cool it, water expands. That's the only thing that does that. Why does it do that? It has very strong surface tension, crucial to life forms. Lots of properties, lots of anomalous properties. I'm scooting on because I want to just mention crop circles. What are crop circles to do with water? Well, I consider crop circles certainly to be sacred sites, to be temporary sacred sites or temporary temples, and they are really still a mystery to us. We don't know lots of things about sacred sites. One thing we do, crop circles. One thing we do know about crop circles is where they're located. And a few years ago, I did this piece of research to mark where all the crop circles occur. And these black dots are crop circles. And this is Avebury area around here. This is Stonehenge. This is Winchester down here. And you can see, actually, that this is chalk. The light green is chalk and the dark green is green sand. And on the next side, these are aquifers. This is the underground water. And look at all the crop circles on the water, and particularly around the edges where the spring line is. I found a correlation. 94.6% of all crop circles recorded occurred above underground water. And underground water that is potentized with earth energy currents. And that's simply the statistics. So, borrowing Hugh's image here, I want to look at some sites that we don't normally associate with water. Stonehenge, what's that got to do with water? Except for possibly scenes of devastation in the end times, but I don't believe that's going to happen if we remain positive. Well, one thing Stonehenge has to do with water is this avenue, which you can see from an aerial shot, and here it is on the map. It goes up through the heel stone and then curves around and goes through a sacred spring and then carries on down to the River Avon that's down here, connecting Stonehenge with water. And there's a poem by Laemon from the 12th century talking about how people would go to Stonehenge and wash the stones and collect the water and then go and bathe in the water because he says by doing this, sick people would be made whole, for not a stone is there that lacketh in virtue of leechcraft, which is another name for medicine. So Stonehenge is connected to water. Silbury Hill, here's a picture in winter of the area around Silbury flooded, and this actually creates the shape of a squatting goddess. I'm afraid this aerial photograph, I wanted to get a photograph, and the person I was flying with in the microlight, it was a strong windy day, and he got his phone and he said, we've got to turn back. And I said, no, a little further. But he said, we've got to go back. He was called back by the airfield because the winds had got too high, so I didn't get a direct aerial photograph. But Silbury, and it's in the floodplain of the River Kennet that arises partly at Swallowhead Spring over here. It's a spring over by Avebury as well. And so this is very connected with water. And here, Merlin's Mound just down the road, 6 miles down the road at Marlborough College. And if you go to Francine's Wiltshire Crop Circle Study Group conference in August, which is highly recommended, then you'll be walking past this every day because the conference is held in the college grounds. Again, here you can see in the old lithograph, it was in the floodplain of the River Kennet. Very important. Wells we mentioned earlier, that the church took over the power there. Glastonbury, the mists of Avalon, the water underlying this land was really important. And Avebury, it's on towards the edge of the chalk land, and it's surrounded on two sides by springs about 5 miles distant, which makes this a whole spinning point of the underground waters. There is, of course, a well in the Red Lion pub. You can look down and see the waters there, and I believe that the ditch surrounding Avebury was flooded with water, as some other people believe as well. And a number of years ago, I discovered this landscape pentagram in the landscape around Avebury, and all 5 points of the pentagram have water at them, 2 of them being springs. Salisbury is built in water meadows, and so is Winchester. And I'm going to actually conclude with a personal story about Winchester. And here's that wonderful image of, this is the crypt of Winchester Cathedral, by the way. In winter, it floods. Well, it did until 3 years ago. It hasn't flooded for the last 3 years, although it flooded every year in its 1,000-year history until 3 years ago. So there is maybe a warning voice about global warming, or global warning, yeah, same thing. Anyway, we were, a group of us were in Winchester on doing some earth energy work, and one person brought along a guest, and on that day this guest was a visiting Australian woman who said she was a channel, and we were sitting at Cathedral Refectory before the day started, having a cup of tea, discussing what we were going to be doing, and she suddenly went into a channeling state and said, there used to be 3 stone circles in Winchester. One, the biggest one, was here under the cathedral, and there were 2 others. One was to do with fire, dedicated to the element of fire, and one was dedicated to the element of water, and something to do with baths. And then she sort of went, oh, that's it. That's all you're getting. And yeah, I was a little sort of skeptical, I must say. But I thought, well, okay, we'll go with the idea and we'll see if there's any evidence for this. And so we started dowsing from the cathedral, following the energy currents, and you come to a park at the bottom of the high street where St Alfred's statue is. And these 3 stones were in the corner of the park, and right here over the railings is the River Itchen running through. So beautiful, clear water. And I saw these stones and I thought, that's really odd. And there's a little plaque, and it describes them as sarsen stones. Sarsen stones are what the majority of stone circles, certainly in southern, in parts of England, are made from. Mostly stone circles are either made of sarsen stone or granite, crystalline studded granite. But sarsen stone isn't native to Winchester. So we thought, that's odd. Why would sarsen stone be here if there hadn't been a stone circle? Maybe it's some evidence. Let's go see. Because on this plaque, it says, these sarsen stones were taken out of the foundation of St. Rule's medieval church when it was demolished in the 1950s. I assume it was damaged beyond repair during the Blitz. So we thought, let's go and see, because it gives a location where St. Rule's church was. Let's go see what's there now and see if we can find any more out about this. Well, we were somewhat surprised, to say the least, to find that it's now McDonald's. And although I was horrified that a medieval church had been pulled down to make way for McDonald's, we did douse that the energy current still flow through the door and in through the central seating area. So actually, maybe it's not a bad thing. How many kids go into medieval churches? And how many kids go into McDonald's? So they are picking up the energy. And look, Upper Brook Street, Brooks. And we thought, now, wait a minute, this was a medieval church. They were taken out of the foundations. So let's put ourselves in the mindset of being the medieval church builders. We want to build a church. We need some big stones, because this is a water meadow. We need some big stones to support our church. Oh, what about those derelict stones over there, where that stone circle used to be? Spin around, look across the street, and there is this new shopping centre, but it's called the Brooks Shopping Centre. So we entered in, dowsing as we went, and when we got downstairs in the car park area, out in front of the lift shaft, this is where we picked up the energy of the former water circle, a stone circle dedicated to water, a concrete floor. Well, that's not a very good story, really, is it? But what we wanted to do also was to douse, to try and find the stone circle dedicated to the element of fire. I'd never heard of stone circles being dedicated to elements. And so we doused through the car park area into a back service passageway, narrow, with all, services, air ducting, water pipes, electric cables going on the top. We found the energetic blueprint still in the land of the stone circle dedicated to fire, and it felt just awful. The guts have been ripped out of the earth at this place, and there are powerful energy currents running through Winchester, and it was so disrupted. We did what healing we could, but it was really even more than we could handle. So we created a little energetic spur to bring the best of the fire circle energy and combine it with the water circle energy, because the water circle felt great. And we did that. Then about 3 months later, we thought we should go back and see what it feels like now. We came in here, went to the back service passageway, where the passageway had now got a door closing it off, where the fire circle was, and this sign on it. We opened the door, alarm bells rang, and security guards came running. They thought we were terrorists. But it's great. Somebody knew that people shouldn't go there. And now there's a red line running down the centre of the passageway. And then the shopping centre had been completed. So where before it was a blank concrete floor, now there's this, the Brooks experience. And look at where the water circle was. Fish, waves, chalices, but fire symbols as well, flames and fire colours. The water energy and the fire energy combined in this one place. And no one knew about this work we'd done. Who had designed this mural? Local primary school children. These things can speak to us. Water can speak to us if we listen. We went upstairs finally to see what shops were there, what shop was above the fire circle. Naked Flame. And it sold candles, but it had closed down. No one wanted to go in. It felt so terrible. And in actual fact, remained empty for 3 years. And last year, it was still empty. We did some healing to try and turn the energy around. And then what shop was by the stone circle dedicated to water? These things have a life of their own. And so I just want to finish my final slide by saying that we are walking a precipitous path as a human race at the moment. And in full view to one side are the wisdom and secrets and message from water, if we will but listen. Thank you.